The changing face of Boston usually suggests tall buildings downtown with great views and high prices. But you can also find change in neighborhoods with the lowest incomes, where the influx of new buildings can relieve the shortage of housing, but also fuel displacement. That's the scenario being played out in a pop-up community art series in the Upham's Corner neighborhood of Dorchester. To tell us about the gentrification game is its creator, performance artist, Tory Bullock. Thank you very much for being with us, Tory.
It's a pleasure.
Tory, you also grew up in Dorchester. Before we get to the game, what about your own experience of this kind of change?
Man, it's just like I grew up right in Dorchester, like you said, and when I was younger, there was just a lot of establishments and a lot of culture that existed there, hallmarks of my childhood that were there. And now that I'm growing older, it's like the hallmark of what those areas were is being pushed out, and not just in terms of businesses, but in terms of the people and the culture is just being like, you have to leave because we can't afford it anymore.
Well, what about the things that you miss that are not there anymore? What do you think of?
Like specifically, it's always hard to answer this question because it's not like there's a specific business that I'm like, oh, I love this business when I was a kid. But I think of stuff like Nubian Notion down in Dudley that are kind of these like staples of an entire community that get kind of priced out of their space.
Right. Now, the other thing is you're talking about neighborhoods where things look different, and people might be saying, if they're not following the news that much, why Upham's Corner? What's so gentrified these days about Upham's Corner?
Well, it's not even necessarily what's gentrified now about Upham's Corner. It's about what's coming to Upham's Corner. Upham's Corner is going to be a bustling, beautiful space by 2030 with Imagine Boston 2030. Like, it's going to be kind of the new arts hub in the city of Boston. And my big thing is just, yes, that's awesome for 2030, but for the people that are there right now who happen to be artists, it's kind of like, well, there's nothing for you here now. Well, to give a sense of that, we're going to run a little bit of the clip from your performance.
Hey, what's going on, everybody out there in the internet world? It is your boy Tory B coming to you live and direct once again because I have a bright idea. The city of Boston has been going through a lot of changes, and as we put up a lot more condos, it's starting to feel like it's a game to these people. So if it's a game, I think we should play. This is the gentrification game, where you get to find out what gentrification feels like firsthand. Follow me. Can you survive in my fictional transitional neighborhood? Are you going to be around long enough to see your check cashers turn into actual banks? There are all types of tips and tricks that you will need, but I am not going to talk to you guys about that until you come on down, so come on down. The gentrification game, a life-size game for a life-size problem.
Explain the context for this performance. This is not just you on your own. This is part of a whole plan.
There's a program out there called DS4&I, and they put out a call for grants for artists who want to create work dealing with any topic that you wanted to. It wasn't even a requirement that you pick a topic like gentrification. But the gentrification game had been something that's been on my mind for such a long time that it seemed like the perfect opportunity to actually bring it to life.
Now, what about the rules of the game? Is this a little bit like Monopoly?
It's a little bit like Monopoly, but with my special touch to it. It's a game that's some people who have played it have given the review of it feels like it's a rigged game. And it kind of is, because it favors the people who have the money, and the people who don't have the money kind of feel a huge sense of frustration.
What was it like when you had people coming to, I guess this used to be a bank building where this
Yeah, so it's taking place at 572 Columbia Road, and it's at a space that used to be a Citizens Bank. Anybody who grew up in Dorchester or grew up in Upham's Corner knows about that huge Citizens Bank spot because it's been there forever. They were recently closed down, and now there's another program going on in there right now. Well, the space is being overseen by DNI, Dudley Neighbors Inc., and they oversee the space, but yeah, it's formerly just a Citizens Bank, and it's still this huge cavernous space because even the program that's in there now can't utilize it.
So what were people like? What were their reactions when they were playing this game?
It's funny because I have a mix of people who come into the game from the street, and then I have people who are already already know what the concept is and stuff. So people who come in off the street, they are just like, what is going on? What is this? Because they see the word gentrification and they already plug in what this this is about that thing that's pushing me out of my neighborhood. And then they come into it and it looks like this bright, colorful, happy game with this music playing and it's this beautiful time, but then you start playing it and it's like, oh wow, this is kind of really translating what I feel when my rent goes up. I'm feeling that same tension right now as I try to navigate my way through this game.
Well, the other plan here is to get people talking, and they also, I guess, they made some comments. They maybe wrote some things out too.
Yeah, so at the end of it, at the end of the game, it's encouraged that you stick around and mingle and talk about gentrification, because not only, this isn't really the place to come to get answers on gentrification, it's the place to come to vent and to be reassured that that strange feeling you have in your head about, oh, things are changing, is actually a real thing that's happening.
This is BNN News, and we're talking about the gentrification game with performance artist Tory Bullock. Tory, you did a previous video in a neighborhood that I'm more familiar with, near Mission Hill on South Huntington Avenue.
Yes, sir.
I've seen a couple of big buildings go up lately, and you did a piece of that. What was the gist of that story?
The gist of that was I'm waking up and there are buildings everywhere. Where are they from and who's moving into them? I see these buildings all over the place, and everybody does in the city of Boston, and they look like these beautiful, super expensive places to live, but they're often empty, especially the one you just pointed out over on South Huntington. There's a slew of buildings over there that look so empty because people can't really afford to live in them.
I'm a little more than a block away. I'm in a mixed income, racially diverse neighborhood. I walk by these buildings. They're not buildings with numbers. They're the Walter Serenity.
Exactly. Serenity.
I mean, there's a
yes.
changing tone here, right?
Exactly. Like, it's so funny you bring that up because one of the funniest bits to me is like I'm walking around, I'll see these buildings that aren't just 56 South Huntington Ave. It's literally, it's serenity. It's above it all. It's the heavens. It's all these glorious titles for these luxury apartments that kind of represent escape. And I just ask, like, escape from what? Me?
All right. By the way, what's the next step in this? Because this is going to be up and running for a while, but what would you like to see happen?
I mean, my ultimate goal is to turn this into two things. One is to turn it into an actual board game that can be sold and given to people across America, because I just think there are a lot of people who have that same frustration about gentrification, that this can be a nice instrument for them to let out their frustration. And then I also want to just take this on a public art tour around Boston and just pop up on corners and museums and alleyways and just kind of give people a space to vent about gentrification.
Some worldwide potential there. Finally, coming back to Upham's Corner, if people want to get in there, see this, take part, what's the exact address they should go to?
Exact address is 572 Columbia Road. It's going to be taking place this Thursday and Friday are the last two dates, actually, and it's going to be taking place from 4 p.m. to 7 p.m.
Thank you very much for being with us.
Awesome. Thank you very much for having me.
Tory Bullock for the Gentrification Game.